It was easy once it was easy.
I know. Dude, isn't that we're already recording, so let's actually talk about that. The concept of things are easy once they're easy
Okay.
is so profound because we were just saying that part of our process is always that when you try to rush something to be better than the level of frequency that you are at to it, it feels so hard to make that change. But the second, literally the second, you've become, for want of a better word, a kind of person who has that thing, then it materializes in your life like straight away. I mean, what a concept.
I know. Are you comfortable sharing like even what that has been for you?
Yeah, it's been just the way that we record the podcast historically has just been so many like just it's felt heavy, it's felt cluttered, it's felt like because I move around a lot, the cluster knows that. I've just always had to like carry like different bits and bobs and this attachment and this plugin and that thing and whatever. And all of a sudden, we found the easiest, most simple solution to podcasting in a way that we never have before, that's like infuriatingly easy for me to do and giving better quality to you guys in a way that felt so stuck before. I mean, if you've ever seen a reel of me doing a podcast episode before this one, it looks grainy, it doesn't look slick, it doesn't look smooth, the sound is not that amazing. And we've just had so many times when it just wasn't flowing perfectly. And yet, you look around at the world and go, well, listen, it's not that it doesn't exist because other people seem to have this shit figured out. So I knew already, and I know enough to know that it's in my energy. And, it really actually is about, and I've done a lot of work around being seen. Um, and I thought I had done all of it. But I think with any of these concepts like being seen or feeling heard or being loved or being worthy, there's layers and layers and layers of it because of the adjacent meanings that being seen is tied to in my brain is coming from different roots in my childhood or different associations that my conditioning has given me or the other people I've witnessed in my life who've contended with that and so on and so forth. So it's not really a one and done thing where like even Instagram can sometimes be reductionist where it's like, if you don't feel seen, it's because you are afraid of people judging you. Like it's yes, and it's also no, because there might be other things to it too, right? And so one of the things that I recently uncovered is that being seen as an umbrella term, I never have a problem sharing what is my contribution to this world. I've never had stage fright in my life. I don't get nervous about speaking to 10 people, 10,000 people. It's never been my issue. So you could classically look at me and say, oh, she doesn't have an issue with being seen. But I did have, and I discovered this when we launched the decision maker, because there is something in the decision maker called looking for conditioned voices interfering, which is when you don't feel clear on a direction you're going on. You use the decision maker to help you see and pass out the different pieces in you that are maybe pulling you in the opposite direction than where you want to go. And out of nowhere, because I've also really at the same time been working on just carving out empty time and space, because if you listen to the new paradigm series on the app, you know that the most important thing we can be doing right now for our evolution is carving out space and time, because also ahas and clarity are coming into us from the universe like quicker and faster, and we just need to be present and quiet enough to hear those things. That's something I heard recently, which is a voice I haven't heard for 25 years. Is I was asking the question, like, what's the block for me here? Like, why does this feel still clunky? And I heard this voice that said that's they love the sound of their own voice. And it also said, who do they, they think they're so special, they think they're so great. And so I
Mm.
realized that even if, let's say 95% of my energy was okay with being seen, the more okay and aligned you become, the more that 5% that didn't used to cost you that much beforehand now costs you a lot, which is why we have to constantly be doing cleanup of things that didn't used to matter or didn't used to affect our energy that much. But because 95% is online, the 5% now, you've done all that work to bring the 95% there. Now you got to address the 5%. And so that thing, that realization, that voice that I heard my dad and his family used to say about people came back to me out of nowhere. And as crazy as it sounds, because we are architects of energy and we tie things together, that was literally what was making my tech harder, because my life, my energy is saying create barriers for me so that I really don't have to deal with this thing. But when I dealt with this thing in the quiet corners of me with me on the bathroom floor, then I didn't have a reason, my ego didn't have a reason for these things to still exist. Because then I couldn't be right about like, oh, it's so much harder for me. And these were never thoughts I obviously had, like, oh, it's so much harder for me. I just was like, why is this feeling so difficult? Like, why am I struggling with this? Why is this annoying me? Why is this feeling irritating? And that literally all went away when I sat with what the reason was that was keeping my energy still subconsciously in, well, absolutely, for God's sakes, don't become someone who loves the sound of their own voice. So now my energy is going about life, making it harder for me to be a person who loves the sound of my own voice by creating tech issues.
And also, I think it's really valuable for people to hear too that in that process that you've been in, I think we can all feel like as soon as we start to see that there is a block, that we must get through the block right now. And what you heard me say at the beginning is that when it became easy, it became easy. That's
Mm.
because every time we knew this block was here for you, we weren't like, oh my God, Jenna, get over this block. It was like, okay, it's there. It'll be easy when it's easy.
hmm And I could not, if even if you and I had sat down for the whole day straight and brained our way into it, there's no way I could have even tried to see it. So there's willingness, but there's no like trying to muster yourself into the clarity. It's actually that you have to soften into the clarity. It's not that we're trying to reach for the one solution that's going to solve all of our problems. It's like, wow, I really have to sit in the fact that this is a pain point to me, and there's obviously something deeper that's going on than just tech not cooperating with me. That's not what's really hurting me. What's hurting me is that my soul knows that it should have the world around it coalescing to help it with its mission in a slightly more helpful way rather than feeling like a block. Um, and I love that, because the more I am quote unquote surrendered to this process, the more I really do believe in divine timing, that something that could be your absolute blessing, if you got it a day sooner than you were supposed to get it, you could burn it to a crisp and ruin it. And it could be anything but a blessing. But anything that has really come to you at the perfect time because your vessel was ready is a totally different energy. So you could have given me the best camera on the planet, by the way, a year ago, and the best tech a year ago, and all of the best things. I still wouldn't have been ready. So I just would have found reasons why maybe that one, the suitcase with it in it didn't make it to where I was going, or something else would have happened. It's not even about the tech. It's just the fact that I needed to create that block until I was ready. So, someone could have it could have got rained on and then the tech got ruined, or who knows. There's a myriad of ways that, because the universe is multifactorial, trust me, there's a million ways that I could have created external things as sabotages or blocks or obstacles to what a part of me actually didn't want to happen and was scared of happening. So I created my outside world to keep me safe and protected.
As we always do, and because we're humans, and that's precious, and it's a part of just how we work. And just FYI, the techie in me is like, there's also a better microphone coming and a better headphone situation coming. So it's even it's even evolving and improving in front of people's eyes, which I think is really cool, honestly.
Mm-hmm. And I'm so okay to tell people like, yeah, it's not great, and it's also we're not at the arrival place, and it's gonna get even better, because like there's no one who's at their final landing place of anything, and everything is constantly in flux. So it's so good to let ourselves off that lie that I'll only be happy or fulfilled or successful, or things are only going to work once I feel like I've arrived, because you don't want to actually feeling like you've arrived is a very scary place to be, because what do you have after that? Where's the growth? Where's the next promise? Where's the next wonder and delight and being surprised by life because you've unbecome something in yourself? And what I just feel so grateful for is I feel like, especially when you and I talk, and me with the very few people who are really like in my personal life, like I know in real life, like you, my sister, my couple of best friends, like where I'm just like, we're so lucky. And then obviously everyone who is part of our cluster, that we're so lucky that how do we get this like secret manual to life? Like, why doesn't everyone see things this way? Because it's so freaking cool and it becomes like such a game. And I just would want everyone to, it's like the most healthy kind of brainwashing. Like, I just want everyone to know this is how things can work.
No, it is. It does. And I think we don't even use the word game lightly because it does feel like right here in this moment, knowing that the tech has felt so much easier than it has before, the video quality is going to be so much better than it has before. How much of a, coin grabbing moment does that feel like? And how fun
Mm,
is that to be like, I want those throughout the rest of my life. I don't want those coin grabbing moments to ever go away.
yeah. And the fact that it takes sometimes a bit longer to figure out, actually also I think makes you appreciate it even more when it finally gets here. I think we all think we want everything to come to us easy, but that wouldn't be the journey of life, is the whole like the investigation, the desire for more, the what do I actually want in this, the time it takes to refine the desire, to learn about the things that we thought we wanted that we actually didn't want. Like all of that is the part that makes the the getting the coin like even more richly rewarding, because you're like, oh, I like went through all of this and now we're here, and I like could sniff it coming and I was circling around it and it was circling around me, and it's like, yeah, it's
The
great.
the development of the coin is just as fun as the cap is as the capturing of the coin. Truly, truly, truly. And speaking of being seen and speaking of, things that you've been reaching for in your desires, Intelligent Change was this past weekend, and I know you wanted to talk to the audience about that because there was a
Mm,
lot of realizations that you had. So, do you want to share
mm.
kind of what um
Yeah.
that is?
I
And
actually haven't even really told you about this part, so I'm
no,
just
you haven't.
excited to
This is
recap you
new,
on it as well.
new
I just,
info.
I've never been to any retreat before, never been part of a retreat, never attended a retreat. I don't normally do those things. So I felt like I was like such a green person. Like I don't go to conferences and summits and retreats and everything. But Intelligent Change was a really special, and it felt special. It felt like special energy because the founders of Intelligent Change, Mimi, Alex, Icon, the two of them, they're the founders of the 5 Minute Journal. And they have so many other different kinds of journals and conversation cards and everything under the umbrella of Intelligent Change. But it was this conference where they got 250 people, took over a whole hotel in Ibiza, and they had a bunch of different speakers on all different kinds of topics. So it wasn't just wellness, it was like crypto people, and there was breathwork people, and there was performers every night, and there was all sorts of different subjects. Like there was a sexologist there was a relationship coach there was a founder, the person who released the iPod, like all sorts of different kinds of things. So it sounded really interesting to me, and I also just love Alex and Mimi's energy, so I said yes to it. And I could recap the whole thing too, and maybe I will. But one of the big learnings for me is, and you and I have talked about this many times in different forms, is really understanding the shadow that we have around how we relate to other people, which we all have in our different ways. But me understanding for so long that with a 4 in my profile, I am here to build close connections. I understood that for such a long time, but this was a weekend that I finally became okay with that. And not just okay with it, but like actually really happy with my lot. And I started thinking to myself, someone actually asked me, we were having like a kind of post-mortem lunch today with a couple of people that were there. And they were like, what was the most important thing that you got from the summit? And I said, I really got this learning that I have a personal lie, that because I can talk to a brick wall, and that's how I was trained, by my mother, I got to tell you about my mom too. So this is how we're paralleling, and this is what's so crazy about this whole thing is that I had this training that what makes you a good human being is being fun, being sparkly, being polite to anyone. Like you get sit next to a stranger and you make their day and you make them happy and you keep the conversation and you whatever. And we're all a very dynamic family anyway. So we are that way built. But I've really sort of learned to kind of overdo it if I'm not really, without really thinking about what I'm getting back from something. Like I can perform my way through and make it a great date or a great lunch or a great whatever. But I've only started thinking about in the last year, paying attention to, well, hold on, I only want to kind of invest in things where I'm also getting equal back from people, whether it's I know them super well or not. So being at a summit like that was really interesting because I realized like, well, it's so obvious that if there's 250 people, you can't expect to get your, conditioned validation from making friends with 250 people. It's just not natural. Like in the old days, we would never have met that many people, much less in one go, and much less having walked away with 10 friends or even five or even in one new friend. So someone said to me, like, the second question at lunch was, who was the person that you enjoyed meeting the most or spending time with the most or whatever? And I caught my brain scanning through the new people that I met. And then my organic answer was just like, actually, the thing I enjoyed the most was deepening my friendship with someone who I already loved, which is Melissa. We got to spend so much time together. And then the follow-up question was why? And I said, because it's such like I'm my unthought through self, she's her unthought through self, and that is what a real true connection should sound like. And I think all women especially, but all people in general, we are kind of taught to kind of contort ourselves to make a dynamic good, and we think that being valuable to society means it being able to get on with everyone super well. And this was the first weekend where I was like, do you know what, there's some people that I'm just okay that I don't love them. They're just not my cup of tea. It doesn't mean I'm picky. It doesn't mean I'm a Scrooge. It doesn't mean they're bad. That one I knew already. Like, it doesn't mean that they're bad. But I was always thinking that there was something wrong with me if someone just isn't my cup of tea. And I was like, you know what? I so love that I get a few people that I don't have to force, that my unthought through self is meeting their unthought through self. And that's the only thing that is making the great connection and chemistry. And wouldn't I pray for the whole world to have like how it used to be, like that handful of people that are your people? And how sweet is that? And how delicious is that? And everyone else is just then free to come and go or not. And you might, learn something new from someone who you never see again. I learned a lot of new things from a lot of new people, but do I have to make them my friend? No. And that doesn't mean they're bad. It doesn't mean anything. It just means that there are some people who are passengers who travel through your life and give you a nugget, and that's all. They don't need to be turned into anything else. And maybe this sounds obvious to some people listening, but this was the reason I want to share it is because I hope it does sound obvious to you, because then you can see how much your own personal lie is also not true. Because this is like revolutionary to me, because this thing has been the thing that I've struggled with for such a long time. Being a kid who was both so shy and so quiet, and also having amazing training to be anything other than that on top of it, that combination has created so much push pull in my energy. And I've been so binary about it. Like, am I fun? Am I not fun? Am I loud? Am I quiet? And whenever you start to ask yourself those kind of questions, that's when you know you're stuck in a war of conditioning, because the reality is the answer is actually there's something in the middle that isn't needing to be defined by, fun or not fun, or quiet or loud, or dynamic or not, or people pleasy or don't give a shit about people. Like, there's myriads of colors in between. And so I just felt so freed by being in that experience, watching, letting chips fall where they may, and realizing that actually the outcome was kind of beautiful, instead of trying to be afraid of the outcome. But then I never know what the outcome can be because I'm almost engineering around it. And so then I'm never getting to see that the actual natural, organic, unthought through way that me would go through that journey of being at a summit would actually be pretty freaking great.
And just as a contrast too, because if you're listening and maybe you do have a 4 in your profile and this is hitting so hard for you, But maybe you're also listening and you don't have a 4 in your profile and you're like, wait a second, is that how I'm supposed to be at a summit? Maybe not. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
a 5 and I would have probably approached something like that completely differently. And also in my own ways had my own shadow around how I'm connecting with people. How you were saying that you could have performed your way through being more, I guess, social or connecting with more people. As someone who, as a 5, I am designed to connect with so many different strangers, even I have in my life been able to perform my way through that because of an opposite reason that I have shadow around going deep, deep, deep connections with people. And so there's times in my life when I've stayed way too surface because I was like, if I give too much connection to someone, they're going to expect deep roots of connection. And I don't have the energy or willingness to give that. And so there's even opposite scales of that experience where I probably would have gone to intelligent change and had moments of connection with a handful of people that I had never met before. And then those people would have gone out into the world. And if I would have left in my aligned, thriving way, I would have known that now there were these little seedlings of connection that I sent out into the world, and that maybe I will just like cross paths with this person and have like an amazing weekend and then never see them again, or, just these seedlings of connection that spread out.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And that's just the profile is just one thing that could be causing these sorts of feelings that you might have. But it's so reassuring to know that we all have, because love and belonging are our two main drivers of life. We really have to find our authentic way with it and uncover the stories that we get told by so many people, like, go deep, but then also don't go deep. So what is that leaves us screwed, because we're like, well, what do you mean by one or the other? Be nice to everyone, but then also have boundaries, like, all this again, it's like becomes a binary, and that's when we know it's wrong. We know that it's false when something isn't nuanced and subtle and custom enough to help you really unpack all the different layers of false belief systems, conditioning, personas that have been unique blend of our stuff that we've packed into this one thing, like having an interaction with a stranger. So of course there isn't one piece of advice on how to interact with a stranger. It's who are you in relation to this idea of interacting with strangers, right? How do you relate to that as a concept? Because how you relate to it is what pulls out all of your the parts of it that it's pulling out of you, the conditioning and the false beliefs and the what your parents did and so on and so forth. And the interesting part about it is that it was my mom who always told us when we were kids, and we got so many beautiful things out of this conditioning too. My mom, probably why I don't get stage fright, quite honestly, because we'd be at a kid's birthday party and my mom would always make me and my sister get up on the dance floor first. She never had any tolerance for us being bored. She was like, never gave us evidence that going first and standing out was like embarrassing, you know? So on the other hand, I have my dad being like, who do they think they are when they're, loud? But then again, we would be like warm and we would be social and we would always be the one making friends with the person who was new in the school. Like all that kind of stuff was my mom was brilliant at it. But it's so funny because, she's been on a real journey herself as well. Actually as has my dad. But, my mom, for all 65 years of her life until last week, would have seen herself as a really, really sociable person and a life of a party. And she over identified with that, where about a year ago, she started realizing, and we would have dialogue about how when she was really sick, she had the story in her head that she was missing out on so much. And one day I said to her, well, mom's like, if you could count on, like, just tell me the things you really genuinely think you missed out on, like the things you would have wanted to go to, like, what are they? And she, in the space of 3 months, she gave me two things. She said a wedding and a safari. And I was like, okay, so not so-and-so's birthday that at the time you think. She said, no, I was fine without that. So I was like, oh, it's interesting to know that actually it's only really two things that were worth it enough to you that you feel like you missed out on. So that was already like planting the seed. And I know that she was acting out of conditioning because her father, my grandfather, had to learn to be that way for his job. He had nothing when he moved from Pakistan on a boat during partition in India. Um, he moved to Dar es Salaam and didn't have any money, any resources, any anything, and had to end up basically scrapping his whole life. Scrapping as in being scrappy with business and stuff and making friends with anyone because, that's where opportunity would come. And so the job that he ended up creating for himself was building factories for governments. This is obviously towards the end of his life. If the Philippines needed a sugar factory or Peru needed a fish farm, like he would do that. In 1974, he was the world's most traveled man. So he was always going and meeting diplomats and ambassadors and rulers of countries and people at Davos and all sorts of things back in the day. The Davos back then, let's just preface, was not the same as it is now. But point being, I always had this feeling that because that's what he got success from and what he was something he needed to be to survive, that gets passed down in the genetic code. And he was the life of the party, but he also, knowing him that I did, everyone knew him as he's the life of the party. Everybody, he knew, his network was so full of all sorts of different kinds of people. It was that glamorized thing of a person who's like that, a bon vivant, who's out every night and stays out till 3 a.m. and is whining and dining all these people and connections, whatever. But, and I used to say this to my mom, he had a side of him where he would dip super low. He wouldn't sleep at night. He'd just pedal around in his dressing gown. He set up his office was in his bathroom. And he would just like work with his abacus in his bathroom. I had a sofa in his bathroom and he'd just like sit and work there. And he could dip super low and he'd have like all these different moments. And the grandpa that I saw was just singing me like ganans, which are like Muslim hymns, and giving me reflexology before bed and didn't want to see people and canceled on people all the time. And, so what can happen is that a person's survival mechanism gets lumped down to the generation below that as a positive thing. And unless you've unbecome it, you then give it to your kids. What's been beautiful is that as I'm unbecoming that thing that she passed down to me, she's also realized that that wasn't even her to begin with, because she called me yesterday saying, I was at a dinner and I was sitting there and I wasn't trying to talk and keep up with everyone like I normally do. And all of a sudden, this thought crossed my mind that said, I could see myself becoming a recluse. And she said, and it shocked me because that's so not me. And I was like, yeah. And I said to her the thing about the binary thinking, like, mums, you probably won't become a recluse. And she was like, well, I never thought I never want to be a miserable old woman. I'm like, oh my God, just because you don't go to every single invite that you're invited to every single night, it doesn't mean that you'll become miserable. And then she starts saying to me, she's like, oh my God, that's so funny because I actually thought that I don't want to spend my birthday this year throwing a huge party for everyone I know, which is what she does every year. And her birthday lasts for a week. She's like, this year, you know what? I said we're invited to a wedding on my birthday, and I just want to go have dinner with their two hosts who are hosting them in Greece. Um, Pamela and Michael, and me and Pops. She's like, we'll go to the Friday night of this party, but on the Saturday night, I just want to be with my really close people. And she's a 4-6.
Oh my gosh.
And
Wow.
so, there's something about paying it back to your ancestors. I'm really learning, like, if you unbecome a pattern that you all share, that you agreed to unburden this belief system together and you do your part, it like somehow liberates the other people to find their role in that part more closely. It's magical what happens.
And I know that we hear this a lot in the therapy world, and there's so much of the mental health conversations that are like, oh, my parents gave me this problem. But there's
Mm,
not enough conversation about how when you do go and heal those things, yes, it can almost like heal backwards, and
mm,
how beautiful that process is. Like, how
mm,
about instead of my parents fucked me up, which
mm-hmm,
you could definitely run with that if you want to, and a lot of people do. How about,
mm,
wow, we are in this lineage of healing, and if this is the thing that got put in front of me, and I am capable of doing the work on myself to transform this and I can pass that backwards. What?
I
That's
know.
that I don't even have words.
And like it or not, we have this shared lineage of we are a soul fractal with our family, and we all are in a little grouping because we have the same patterns. Because, duh, that's how it gets passed down, is because you agree to have the same patterns and you are all sharing the task of, as a little soul grouping, unwinding this specific one that some humans can have. And, honestly, the most beautiful part of it is that of course, it has to be that way in my movie because there's no longer a need for me to have a mother who is quote unquote imposing or living that kind of conditioning. So even if you're the only person here and everyone else is an illusion and it's just you and God, or whether everyone else is at their own process at the same time, it's the same result either way. Like, I cannot possibly have a mother who's still holding on to that conditioning. It's a question of if not when, because if I'm radically agreeing to just go there anyway, even if that might make me less like her, or let her understand me less, or praise me less, or her old version praise me less for my young self, like any of that. And I really let go of it. And I trust that this is a good thing for my soul to be free of, to decondition from. Then the outside world really shifts. And I will tell you the wildest thing that I really am going to preface by saying, we were not brought up spiritual. We were not brought up connected. We were not brought up with any kind of intimacy at all, especially not emotional intimacy. My parents had zero interest in any of this stuff. And I had always had a dream of, I'd always had a dream of the kind of mother that I wanted. And I also always had a dream of the kind of relationship I wanted with my mother. Now, I don't have the mother that I wanted in the sense that she's not, I'm not 6 years old again, and she's not, baking me stuff and picking me up from school on time. You know, I put her to bed. But I also put to bed having the kind of dynamic I wanted with this person is who they are. And I have that now, even long years and years and years after I fully gave it up, because I decided that I had to live with just in peace, so that that was not going to be the kind of mother-daughter relationship that I dreamed of. And you know what? It's better now, because not only do I have the dynamic with her that I always wished I had, but also she's still the same person that she was. She didn't change. She didn't become the home baker that I wanted, that I thought she needed to be for me, for my 6-year-old self to be. I love and appreciate who she actually is so much more. And I got what I wanted. And I really don't want to be so foolish as to say that that's the promise of every single dynamic in your life, because other people come to teach us that we can't hold on to everyone, and other people come to teach us boundaries and whatever. But I will say that specifically in the two people whose DNA created yours, you can absolutely pay back the places which are your pain points, which are really honestly the two places where you bump up against each other because you have the same shared shit. And so if you are not doing that dance anymore, the other side of that dance either ceases to exist altogether or doesn't come your way. It has nothing to engage in you, at least. So it's a really, really cool thing to feel like I am living through, rather than just hearing people, spiritual concepts around. Like, it's a very real thing that I want you to understand, that you can absolutely do this as long as you have a commitment to. And I really encourage you to listen to the latest New Paradigm episode. It's in the app under energy updates. You'll see the workshops. But if you practice the radical pulling out of all the stimulation in today's world, that's the only ticket that you need to buy that earns you this amount of self-awareness and ahas. If we stop running and numbing and distracting and worshiping false idols and following shiny carrots, and radically saying, I need to practice. If I prioritize my becoming in every situation, in every moment of my life, and I make everything be about that, because it is, then there's no kind of smart you need to be, no more podcasts you need to listen to, no more anything you need to do than just trust yourself that the answer will come to you if you carve out the time and the space to do it. and you are so deserving of the miracles that come from it. And it's not miracles like, of course, it's miracles like success and happiness and fulfillment, but it's also success like deep connection, like revering who you are when you witness yourself in a crowd of 250 people, um, respecting the beauty of your own soul. Like those are things that we don't often get told, that you can have all the good stuff in the world, but if you don't have those things, then it's still not the same to have that emotional intimacy and the ability to be honest with softness that needs to get practiced. And when you do it, it makes everything you do in life more rewarding. So it's all of that. It's all of that other stuff that gets promised to us when we prioritize our becoming. And I really want everybody to know that they can have that.